all of us in some way bend our ideas and views of God to suit our needs. And we need to understand, we first need to be able to see, how am I doing that? If I can't understand the ways in which I'm bending it, and I'm making my theology and my views and my beliefs about God and the things in Scripture I emphasize and the things I dismiss. If I don't understand the way that my personality is playing a role within that, it's going to be really detrimental.
Today, we're going to learn how we relate to people as, really, the way we relate to God is how we relate to people as well, and find out how our childhood shapes our personality. We have Jesse Eubanks with us. He wrote the book, Understanding God, Yourself, and Others Through the Enneagram. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, you're welcome. So let's start out with something that my wife brought up because of something that she saw. Should Christians be using the Enneagram? Because I hear a lot of, like, this is naughty and wrong. And what say you, Jesse?
Yeah, I know. So let me start here. I am very sympathetic to people that have concerns about the Enneagram. You go online, you Google it. There's a lot of bizarre and concerning things that do come up, and I think that we as Christians are absolutely called to be discerning in which things we utilize. So let me start off by just saying that the specific concerns, some of them are just rumors. So there's really, really weird rumors about the Enneagram. Things like visions of archangels and evil entities, and those things were created literally as rumors to discredit the work that people have done. The claims those people were made about, they themselves have gone on record as saying none of that happened. That's not true. They're just rumors. So I always like to remind Christians, we need to not participate in rumors. So if you come across those rumors, they are not true. Do not spread them. The second thing would be this. God works through a lot of very strange sources in life. There are a lot of beautiful gifts in my life that have not come from Christians or have come from strange, backgrounds. I live in a country that I really appreciate. I would not say that all the architects of the country shared my faith. And yet, do I believe that God worked through them in order to allow me to enjoy certain gifts? I do. And so I think that we have to dispel the rumors. We have to understand that God allows us to enjoy benefits from unlikely places. And then the other pushback is a lot of people say, well, it's not psychologically valid. That's bunk as well. The folks that helped curate the Enneagram studied at Harvard, studied at Berkeley, brought in contributions from Freud, from Jung, a lot of leading psychologists. So the theological concerns I get, and then I also do understand the psychological concerns. But ultimately, it ain't the Bible. This is just a tool.
Right.
We're looking at an imperfect tool that I hope God can use in order for all of us to understand our relational style and how it's shaping our faith and our relationship with other people and ourselves. All that to say, if you got more questions and you're like, I don't feel satisfied by Jesse's responses right here, you can head over to our website, lovethyneighborhood.org/Enneagram, and I go more in depth there in order to respond to some of this.
I really appreciate how you call it it's just a diagnostic tool for how we can better relate to each other. And
It's just like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC test or something like that.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
And I found that to be true. I was like, oh, that's why Misty thinks that way. That's why Kate thinks that way. So I feel better informed about my co-host.
I was very startled because I think this was the third version of the test I've taken, and this was super accurate. It was offensively accurate.
Yeah.
I felt like it took a little bit of a tone with me, and it also was like, this probably happened in your childhood to make you this way. And I was like, okay, well, just get out of my business now. It was It was spot on to a startling degree.
Yeah, she took the test, stopped by my office on the way out the door, and she says, "I'm offended." And I was like, "It's just a computer that said something. It's not
You said
personal."
that was probably a very four-like response too, to be offended.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. If you are not offended at some point in your exploration of the Enneagram, you are doing it wrong, because it is a tool that both, on the one hand, affirms us. It highlights these great and wonderful God-given gifts, and at the same time, it also brings to us the ways in which we are abusing these gifts, the ways in which we are taking these great things and we are using them in ways that are our attempt to feel valuable, to feel safe, to feel free. So feeling offended is the appropriate response at some point.
Yes, I'm right on target. I did it right.
You're doing great. You're doing
Thank
great.
you.
Jesse, can you share an example how the Enneagram could help us? We have a story of how it could help somebody grow closer to God.
Yeah, here's the thing. The truth is this. A lot of us think that we are sort of neutral players when it comes to sort of our theology, our beliefs about God. And if we just had sort of empirical, good theology, we would see things with perfection. But the truth is this. All of us in some way bend our ideas and views of God to suit our needs. And we need to understand, we first need to be able to see, how am I doing that? If I can't understand the ways in which I'm bending it, and I'm making my theology and my views and my beliefs about God and the things in Scripture I emphasize and the things I dismiss, if I don't understand the way that my personality is playing a role within that, it's going to be really detrimental. So you think about it. So I'm a type 3. Any of you guys type 3s?
I think that's what I was.
Okay.
Yeah,
Were you a three?
that's what you
Yeah,
said.
but I think it was a little off track. I'm going to have to take it again. Part of it was true and part of it was not.
Yeah, sure. And there's some reality to that. So let me just, okay, so if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, type 3, let me give an example. When I am a type 3, we are known as the achiever. We're sort of vision casting people. We like to inspire people. We love to communicate. We love getting behind microphones and talking to people. That's kind of our jam in life. But on the flip side of it, there's a part of us that feels like we got to do the dog and pony show in order to receive love and affection from people. I won't be admired and valued unless I put forward a face that is admirable and valuable. And so you take that and you exaggerate that and you implant that on the church. You end up with, Hillsong, New York. You end up with the Carl Lentz kind of dynamic of we're going to uphold celebrities and we're going to uphold, being around famous people and lots of money. And there's a twisting of the gospel that takes place in that. And self-awareness is just kind of critical for having relational health with God and other people. If we don't have self-awareness, we're going to do a lot of damage to a lot of people. And so especially for me as a type 3, we kind of have this climbing the ladder kind of energy about us. That means we're going to have influence, and that means that we got to steward that well.
That's good.
Yeah. Excuse me. There are so many books and tools, and the Enneagram, as we've established, is one of them. Tell us a little bit about your personal journey into the Enneagram that even led you to write this book, and how you designed it to be kind of set apart from the others.
Yeah. Okay. So there's one story that I sort of tell in the book where I sort of lose my mind, and it's me screaming at God. And so if you read the book, you'll get that story. Let me give kind of the other one that didn't show up as much, which is this. I was on staff at a homeless shelter for 9 years. So we're every day taking care of our city's poorest citizens, people in desperate need, people who slept out on the concrete the night before. And every day we're talking about the love of Jesus. Jesus loves you so much. The Lord has a desire for you. He wants you to come into the family of God. And the whole time behind the scenes, we as a staff were dysfunctional. We were not getting along. We were bickering with each other. We were undermining each other. We didn't trust each other. So there's this sense in which we were like, I say we were like airplane salesmen that were hoping you didn't ask us if we actually knew how to fly the plane. You know, it's like we were talking about this love of God, but we ourselves didn't actually have the tools to know how to do it with each other.
Right.
And so it was in that moment that that a couple of older, seasoned, wise pastors came in to counsel us and shepherd us, and they brought this thing called the Enneagram that totally sounded like pentagram and totally freaked me out at first. And then as they began to walk through it and describe it, I mean, they got to my type in particular. And it was shocking, the level of insight. And I think in particular, what it helped me do was really do the work of going, who I think I am and who I actually operate as are not the same person. And I need to come to terms with that, because living in a fantasy is hurting my relationships with God and other people, and I need to deal with that.
Oh.
Wow. And because there's some truths there, you just don't want to think are as real as they are, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard somebody say, like, you wake up to reality, and part of waking up to reality is there's a grief to that because you're embarrassed about what you find. You know, it's
wow.
like, oh my gosh, I've been doing that thing, and I've been treating these people in this way, and I didn't even realize I was doing it, but they all knew, but I couldn't see it. And so there's a temptation for us just to kind of stay status quo. But when we think of Jesus inviting us, he wants to give us abundant life. He talks about that the truth will set us free. And I believe it's the truth of who he is. But I also think, like, at another level, like, he's just saying, live in reality. I'm in reality. I want you to live in reality with me. And that means you got to come to terms that some of this is a part of who you are.
That's true. So real quick, we did address yours, Kank, just with your expansive knowledge of the Enneagram. I thought it would be fun real quick if Sally and I told you what our numbers were and you gave a brief little synopsis and we could see if. So I was a 4.
Yeah.
Tell me about 4s.
Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready?
No.
If we hear your microphone suddenly turn off and feet running out of the studio. Okay. So I've got a ton of 4. So let me start off by that. Like, it's my wing. So it's like I'm a 3, but I got a ton of 4. So I love 4s. You guys, type 4s, the originalist. These folks, when they're healthy, they're creative, they're empathetic. They see new pathways to doing things. So everybody else is like, here's the obvious answer. The 4 kind of has this creative bent. They have an orientation around beauty, around aesthetics. They love unusual things. They love one-of-a-kind things. On the backside, on the dark side, when they're not living out of their true self in God and they're living out of this false self, they can struggle with moodiness. They can struggle with needing to be different. Like, it becomes like everybody else is like, hey, I love this movie. And they're like, I hate that movie, even though secretly they probably actually like that movie. And the resounding thing, that sort of the alarm that goes off repeatedly inside them is, I don't feel understood. I don't feel understood. Even if everybody understands them, it's sort of they have a perpetual sense of like, I'm on the outside, even if they're not. So that's the true self, false self stuff. What do you think?
Oh, it hurts. It's so true. It hurts. It's funny because I've often talked about, you were talking about feeling on the outside. I've often said as an adult, even now, I didn't really progress past how I felt when as early as elementary school. I always feel like the least cool, least liked person in the room. And not included with everybody else. I feel like everybody's probably doing stuff and not telling me about it because they don't want me around.
Yeah. Yes. So and that alludes to, and without getting kind of in the weeds, but the Enneagram is sort of this like, it's a way of organizing information that builds itself out. But the type 4 and 3, so my type, your type, are both in what are called the heart triad. We are driven by our emotions. We interpret the world emotionally. We interpret the world socially. But that also means we feel shame more acutely than other people do. There's a sense in which we just sort of feel I'm gonna get left out. I'm gonna get abandoned. I feel embarrassed. But that also means this: we have a really deep response anytime that we hear somebody bring the gospel to us in the form of the Lord delights in you. The Lord sees you and he loves you just as you are, and you're the apple of his eye, and you are the one that he just loves so much. Like when we really believe that and take that into it, our shame begins to dissipate and we begin to go, I'm okay. I'm okay. The Lord sees me and loves me. And so any of that resonate?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's kind of what I cling to when I'm feeling, when I start feeling that way, because it's like, well, God loves me and God will include me. And God takes delight in me.
You know, when God designed Kankelfritz and Friends, he brought 3 friends together who are so different. But all love the Lord dearly. And so I am kind of the one that's on the outside. I'm a 7. I've taken it several times. I'm always the 7 with an 8 wing, and I'm like, one of these people is not like the other, so okay, give it to me straight.
This is awesome. So okay, so you're like the party person. I mean, so the 7 is known as the enthusiast. So these folks, first off, these folks are in the head triad. They interpret the world primarily through their thoughts. So they are looking at the world and they're a lot of analyzing and a lot of rapid imagination, a lot of sort of envisioning, but they have very active minds. I think 7s probably have the most active minds of all the 9 types. So let's talk about 7s. Okay, so out of their when they're healthy, living out of their true self in Christ. I say it this way: every day is bring your inner child to work day. Like they just have this sense of childlike wonder about the world, about the possibilities of life, a real desire to like, let's go do things and try things and experience things. And like if you hang out with a 7, like sort of their catchphrase is just like, what if blank, 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 blank. Like they're just full of possibility. And they often have a very beautiful childlike faith. So like when Jesus talks about like we must become like little children, 7s get that at like a deep level. And then when they're not healthy, they slide into a place in which that dreaming and possibility becomes naive, and they become sort of they're not willing to look at some of the hard facts in front of them. They become the most sensitive to pain of all the 9 types. So things that become really uncomfortable. So a common example is like if I teach on the Enneagram and I give the exact same amount of time to the 7 as I do to all the others, 7s will come up to me afterwards and say, "You were harder on us than you were on anybody else." And I'll go. No, I don't know how to say, like, you're just very sensitive about pain. Like it's just a part of, because 7s have a longing for bliss, really, I think it's a longing for shalom. It's a reconciliation of all things. So I think of this book that came out years ago, The Kingdom of God is a Party. And I think like 7s are like the embodiment of that truth. Like you guys just know how to celebrate and worship and joy, and life is full of wonder. But there is that work to do on the side of a relationship to pleasure, and settling, like sort of sliding down into gluttony and sort of overindulgence. Like too much of a good thing is almost enough, for some 7s. So what do you think? Does any of that resonate?
Yeah, it does. But I think they don't know this because I tamp it down a lot. That 8 side, I think, shows up a lot. And, but they probably would hear it in that the things that I share are always like, can't we all just get along? Can't we all just have a good day? Let's just have a good day, So I think that joyful side is easy to bury because you also feel all the responsibilities of life. So,
well, now you probably need to explain what an 8 is.
Yeah. So, and so, Kank, what did you say? Did you say your type already?
Yeah, I'm a 3, but part of it doesn't click at all. So I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, let's see if any of the 8 stuff kind of shows up, and so let me describe 8s a little bit. So 8s, so these folks are in the body triad. The body triad says 8, 9, 1. Those folks, they interpret the world primarily through their instincts. So it's not sort of through, let's think through the math of it all, and it's not really sort of like, what do I feel? It's like this. It's in their bodies. In fact, a lot of body types will look down at their arms and their hands, and they'll literally go like, what is my body language telling me? Because that's the first sign of what their true instincts are. So
it's interesting because Sally does talk about her gut feeling about people all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
I think I'm more 8 than 7, but 7s always show up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 8s, okay, their nickname is the Protector, and their deep desire in life is to protect themselves and the people they love from dangers and from threats. And they show up with energy. All the other personalities run on 110, 8s run on 220. They sleep less than any of the other types. They go longer and harder than any of the other types. I think of my buddy who's an 8, and like we're hanging out. I'm like, we're at a cabin. I'm like, I think I'm going to go relax. And he goes, me too. I go take a nap in a swing. He goes and gets a machete, cuts down, branches off a tree, carves them into fishing poles, and then goes like, wasn't that relaxing? And so these folks are very, they're natural leaders. They speak with great confidence. They tend to be very fearless people. They're bold. When they come into the room, you feel their presence. So when they're healthy, they're incredibly inspiring leaders who are very clear. When they slide into a place of not being healthy, that desire to want to protect themselves and other people slides into a place of a need to be in control. And that need to be in control then makes them take on a place where they can't see or accept any weaknesses in themselves. Things that are tender, things that are vulnerable, things that are soft. They feel like those things are threats to who they are, and they got to stomp that out because they got to put up their dukes. They're ready to go. They can, at times, if they slide far enough, they love the energy of arguments and fighting so much that they can't turn it off.
Wow.
And so there's a sense in which it's like the rest of us are like exhausted. We're like, oh my gosh, I want to go take a nap. And they're like, let's get in the ring and like have it out. And that gives energy to them. And so, the number one complaint of those around them is, I don't feel heard by you, because the 8 has so much energy that they get tunnel vision. They can't not see what they're seeing, and what it takes for others to kind of snap them out of it can be a challenge. So great leaders, but we have to be careful. I mean, legit, this is the truth. You take that non-resourceful 8 energy, that unhealthy energy, you take that train all the way to the end of the station, and you've got Mark Driscoll. That's the kind of vibe, You've got that, like, I see it with such clarity, and we're going after this, but there's a lot of controlling energy that comes up.
Gotcha. Okay.
You've referenced several times like the way the spiritual health will affect what part of your style, so to speak, comes out. And so you've also heard it said the way that we relate to people is how we can relate to God. So how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, so for example, for me, so I'm a type 3. I'm like, in my relationship, I'm like, I tend to be like a doer. Like, let's go do things. Let's build things. Let's work on projects together. Think about my prayer life. My prayer life probably tends to be action oriented. My prayer life tends to be not as emotionally attuned, because I'm like, yeah, emotions, but we got things to do. And this tendency towards wanting things to be all about the vision of God and what's coming, but I'm not always very attentive to the truth of where I am in this actual moment, because that's my trick. I'm like, but Lord, this is what gives me purpose. So in the same way, somebody that's got a lot of 4, it's going to be that tendency towards the prayer life is going to be like full on authentic, but it could at times struggle to be hopeful. It could struggle to be positive. It could struggle to go, Lord, here's what's possible. It can just have this sort of gravitational pull towards authenticity, even if the authenticity in that moment is like not very healthy and can't see the bigger picture. And so same thing with 7 stuff, it's like the prayer life tends to be very hopeful and all things are possible and doesn't tend to reflect so much on the negative and the painful and the hardship and the other aspects. And so we have to think of it like it's not that we're our orientation as whatever our type is, our way of seeing is totally wrong. It's the fact that we fixate on that one way at the exclusion of all these other ways of seeing. So the authentic prayer of the 4 is wonderful, but what about the call for integrity? What about the call towards we need to go do and be righteous and we need to serve other people? And that it's not just a prayer life that's about here's what I'm feeling, but also a prayer life, Lord, help me, make me obedient. Lord, call me forward into a discipleship that's active. Lord, help me to know the truth and rehearse the truth to myself. So all of us, all of us, regardless of our type, we just fixate on things at the exclusion of the bigger picture of who God is.
Yeah.
That's good. I want to know something about Misty.
Uh-oh. No.
So she herself has said that this is an issue, yet she continues to do it.
Oh, no.
And that is ascribe tone to things that was never there. And like a text message or, your own test.
Or Enneagram test results.
Had a tone. And I've like, sometimes I'll text her and I'll say, no tone added here. In other words, there's no.
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
No,
but
no subtext.
Yeah, it seems like life is interpreted as people. Well, you take things personally where it may not. It's not intended that way,
And the test did actually address that too. So it was interesting to kind of, and I think I probably ascribe tone, and maybe this also lines up to things that I don't want to hear. So if or I will automatically infer something that I don't want to hear into what you said. And so and my test results did talk about how much I focus on the negative and how often I will make something that's not negative.
That even
Absolutely.
comes up,
Yes.
Misty, with things that I'll say that even today and yesterday, I was like, Misty, you got that completely backwards from what I was saying. It's like you translated it in your head into something negative that wasn't even near what I was saying. And I was like,
people have said that to me. My family was saying that to me when I was like 5 and 6. Like that, what you heard is not what we said.
it just made
Where are you
me
getting
sad.
this?
I was like, oh.
It's like emotional dyslexia. My brain flips it.
There's some truth to that. So I'm a 3, but I've got a raging 4 wing. So I've got a lot of that in me. So each of the 9 types have a psychological defense mechanism. It's a way for our prideful sort of ego self, like to protect itself, because we don't want to be hurt any further and we want to uphold what we think of ourselves. Well, the one for the 4 is literally to reject positive information about ourselves. And so when positive things are brought to our attention, we sort of, folks with a lot of 4, we have that tendency to see it and go like, that's not the real stuff. But everything negative, we go, yep, I'm ready to sign on the dotted line. We're positive. That's the truth. And so, so we have to really, if we got a lot of 4 in us, we got to do that work of really making sure that when we receive positive information that we go, I accept this. Thank you. I accept this.
And not that everything is said to you is negative either. How do you guard against that? Because my wife deals with that too. She'll use terms like the whole world, blah 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 blah, and I'm like, well, you don't know the whole world, and I don't know that they're all against you as well. So it's just this overarching thought process
They
of.
are.
They are.
She's like, I knew it. I mean, but isn't that like Kenka, isn't that like that's all of our thing? All of us take this thing that's true, and then we bet way too much on it. We like exaggerate it to the point that it becomes disconnected from the truth. Like, and I think in some way, like it's almost like we're all hypnotized in our own way of seeing. It's like, I'm convinced that this is the way that all of reality works. And then somebody else comes and they're like, well, actually, and we go, yeah, but your way's dumb. Because this is really the way, that things work. And so yeah, that's a conversation my wife and I have all the time. She's a type 6, and she'll just go, everybody's real motive is blank. And I'll go, you don't know everybody's real motive, because I believe that maybe that's your motive, but that doesn't mean that it's theirs. But for her, that tends to be the path that she goes, and she is working on that, just as I'm working on my stuff.
Yeah.
I love what's happening here, just in that we're learning to relate to each other, and why we are acting the way we are. It kind of makes the whole package. And for me, I'm thinking that realizing our own type helps us understand that there are other types that we can appreciate.
Yes.
And
yeah,
so,
let me give like a small example. Like, my wife and I, I don't know how you all fight with your spouses if you guys are married. Like, but like some people are like very soft and polite. Like my wife and I we're kind of bigger personalities. So like when it gets going, like we get a little bigger. Well, I eventually realized like she is a type 6. Their nickname is the Loyalist. Their tendency is towards catastrophic thinking. So what that meant is that every time early in our marriage we get into an argument and I would go, I need to go take a breather, she was convinced I'm leaving. Like, we're going to get a divorce. Like, I'm out. And I had no notion, because that's not entering my mind at all. I'm just thinking I'm just irritated and I need a breather so I don't say something stupid. And so I would come back and she's like, oh my gosh, you came back. And then it's this realization of like, oh, if I know that about her, I can say, listen, I'm really mad. I'm really mad right now, and I'm going to go take a breather, but I'm coming back, and we will figure this out. And so the ability to understand, I would approach all three of you differently if I had conflict with you, depending on your personality. In the same way that I would approach my children all different if I had issues to address with them, because I want to love them. I want to customize my love for them. And I think in the same way, God customizes his approach to us as well, but we have to understand who we are to understand how he's doing that.
That's really good.
I was talking to my mom about being offended by my test results, and she's like, what you're missing is this is also what you said, a great way to figure out where your problem areas are and how you think about yourself and how you think about God. Like, use this as a tool to know what's going on in your head, which sometimes you're not sure of. And I'm like, that's absolutely true. So I think you're right. It can be a wonderful tool for that.
Yes. And to realize this too. I mean, here's the real gift, Missy, like type 4 is one of the greatest gifts that they bring to the church is the gift of lament. I think that there's a real tendency. I mean, you guys work in radio. You all know that there's this tendency in Christian media to make everything celebratory and joyful all the time.
Right.
And then you walk outside the studio and you go, life is really painful and hard sometimes. And the 4 brings that gift to the table and says, the Lord can meet us in this lament and we can be honest about it. It's not going to swallow us, but we can bring this with honesty to God. And I think that in that way, all 9 of the types bring a particular gift to the church and to the world that reflects the character of Jesus. And so yeah, I love 4s. Y'all are awesome.
I do excel in lament. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was curious, do certain personality types tend to be more melancholy as to the degree of needing antidepressants and things like that? Is that a personality thing, or is that something else?
Yeah, it's like a chicken and an egg scenario, right?
Is
it's
it?
Like it's hard to know which is which. There are some personalities that do tend to be more melancholic, and it's the withdrawn personality types. So so the 9s, the 4s, and the 5s all sort of have a withdrawn energy about them, and so they just tend to naturally want to spend more time alone. But that also leans them in the direction of they can become more melancholic. In the same way, like I have a lot of 7 energy, I also have diagnosed ADD. The 7 energy, that energy of like, what's the next thing? Let's do the next thing, the next exciting thing. Our brains are hunting for stimulation all the time So it is common. It is not that everybody that is a 7 has ADD, but if you've got ADD, you're going to have a lot of 7. And so so there are definitely correlations that show up in different personalities. I've got a friend who's is not a type 4, but has diagnosed depression, and so she has a lot of 4 in her personality. But that is not to say that all 4s struggle with depression or all 4s have depression.
Right.
But if you do struggle with depression, it's going to show up as 4 energy.
Interesting. When I took the test, it said that I was a 3, and then it said that under certain conditions, under stressful conditions, I'm a 9, and then under relaxed conditions, I'm a 6. What does that mean? Stressful, this comes out. Relaxed, this comes out.
Yeah. Okay, so in Enneagram theory, there's a few pieces. So if you're listening to this and you're like, all this sounds insane, hopefully this will help a little bit. Each of us has a core type. The idea is that early on in life, somewhere between the mystery of nature and nurture, somewhere between mom and dad's DNA and the things you lived through, you developed a personality, and you slid into one of these 9 types. That being said, you've got a wing on each side that flavors your personality, but you also have this thing called arrows. And that means you begin to pull traits from other areas of personality. So the 3, when they are when they're stressed out and when they are exhausted, they pull from the 9 energy. That usually looks like this. 3s will go out and they will kill it. They will like Steve Harvey their day. They will go out and do like performance after performance, thing after thing, project after project. And then as soon as they get home, they absolutely collapse. It's like Netflix for 3 hours. No one talked to me. They don't tend to take great care of themselves. They're just sort of like, and then they get up the next day and then they go hard again and then they collapse again. And so, so they take on that side of the 9 that tends to just kind of check out and sort of become lethargic. One of my friends who's a 3 says like she knows she's in that space. Like she'll teach like a workshop. It'll be like 7 hours, and then she'll go out to a restaurant and she doesn't even want to lift the fork to her mouth. It's like so that's that 9 energy. The six, when they're healthy and they're pushing themselves, they move past the need to be liked and the need to be admired, and they begin to access that 6 energy, which is what is good for all of us, what's going to benefit the whole community, what does it look like to really be faithful to everybody around me beyond just sort of what is going to benefit me personally. And so they begin reaching out for, the 6 is like that covenant of God quality, that sense of I've made a pact with these people and I'm going to hold to it, even if that means that other people are going to say, man, you really passed up a great opportunity, or man, you really sound like an idiot because, you said this thing that was true and honest and authentic, and it was faithful to the people around you, but it didn't play that well socially. So our PR suffers, but it suffers for the sake of the community that is good and righteous.
That's good. I just realized if someone's listening to this, maybe they should just pause this and go take the test. Where do you recommend people do that?
Yeah, so tests are sort of a contentious thing in the Enneagram world because they don't always produce fair results. So let me start with this. If you take a test, understand that it's not like going and getting like your, white blood cell count taken or something. It doesn't work in that way. What the test can do is show you where to be curious. You have a lot of this quality and a lot of this quality and not much of this quality, but it's not necessarily going to definitively tell you your type. That being said, the test that I recommend is through a ministry called Crosspoint Ministry. And if you go to their website, they've got a page for the Enneagram, and then you could take their test, and it will produce very clear results that have been very well scientifically studied and proven. So it's one of the most reliable tests out there. So crosspointministry.com, I think.
Yep. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. That's it, crosspointministry.com. Yep, we got it right. Okay.
I love that you poured your heart into this, and I'm really motivated to better understand the people around me and to use this as a tool to not only understand, what needs to be tamped down in me, but also to recognize how I can build up the people around me. It's very effective.
Yeah. So as we are wrapping up this discussion, what is it that you're hoping people will take away when they read How We Relate?
Yeah, I mean, I could say it this way, for as long as time has existed, we've argued about what is the meaning of life. And a lot of people have put forward their ideas, but I believe that the Bible attests to this simple truth: the purpose of life is relationships. I believe that the two greatest commandments that God gives us, to love him with all of our being and to love others as we love ourselves, fundamentally that is to say that we are relational people. My hope with this book is that every reader will come away understanding more of how they relate, their relational style, and that they would understand how other people relate to them, and that ultimately we can begin to peel back the curtain a little bit and understand the beautiful ways in which Jesus is customizing his love for each of us and meeting us where we are, and that we can step into more life-giving, beautiful relationships. Because the deal is this: when all of us are on our deathbed at the end of it all, none of us are going to go, man, I wish I worked more. Man, I wish I made more money. All of us are going to go, what beautiful relationships I had in life. And so this book is pursuing that. It's an opportunity to go deeper into your relationship with God and other people.
That's good. I think I'm going to retake the test because, like, one of the things it said that I was, and I'm totally not, that I'm organized. I'm like, what?
I will attest to that being a falsehood.
I'm like, I don't know. But the other thing is, I don't know if there are other people that feel the way I do. I am so unaware of what's going on inside of me. Like my wife, she'll go, "Are you upset?" And I'll be like, "No." She goes, "Notify your face."
Yeah.
And I'm just emotionally disconnected. Like I'll know something's up, but I don't quite get. But I really want to get what's going on. I really want to understand it.
Yeah. Well, in for what it's worth, in Enneagram theory, threes, we are very emotionally driven, but we don't like it, and so we ignore it. So we actually feel very deeply. And it can catch us off guard at times where we go, whoa, where'd that come from? But we feel like emotions are kind of an out of control thing, so we tend to want to repress them and put them down. And so there's different types that are like that. Sixes are thinking repressed, and nines are body repressed. They don't pay attention to their bodies and instincts very well.
That's interesting. Well, we always love to end our interviews with this question, and it's fun, the different answers that we get. Jesse, what brings you joy?
Oh my gosh, I love being with my kids. My kids are just, their existence brings me a lot of pleasure. They're both teenagers, and seeing them grow up. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but just seeing them grow up and who they're becoming, I'm just their presence in my life brings me a ton of joy.
That's awesome. Great answer. Well, I'm excited to, for people to read this book and find out more about themselves. Understanding God, yourself, and others through the Enneagram. Thank you, Jesse Eubanks. And people want to know more about you. How do they do that?
Yeah, so if you want to know more about the book, so it's called How We Relate, Understanding God, Yourself, and Others Through the Enneagram, you can head to howwerelatebook.com. If you want to learn more about the ministry work that I do, you can head to our website, lovethyneighborhood.com. and lovethyneighborhood.org. And while you're there, you can learn about our urban missions program for young adults, the workshops that we offer on the Enneagram, and then we also have a couple podcasts, the Love Thy Neighborhood podcast, which is if you baptized NPR, you'd get our show, and then the Enneacast, which is the podcast where we explore the Enneagram from a gospel perspective. So there you go.
Cool. Sounds awesome. Thank you for your time.
I think we'll all walk away a little more sensitive to each other and to ourselves as well, and how we can relate and serve God better.
Yeah, how many of us are going to have their spouse take the test? Because I am.
I already know I'm married to a 3, I think. Kind, sensitive, wonderful man.
That's awesome. Cool.
But I got to figure out, Mike, do you remember telling me not so long ago that you just act like a boss?
That you do?
Yes.
Oh.
You said it's just that you act like a boss. That 8 side of me, I think.
She's
You're a
like,
boss
I'm not acting like a boss. I
I'm
am
not
the boss.
acting like a boss. What are you talking about?
That's right. I am I'm really in charge here.
And I said, Kankelfritz, what's up with that tone you just gave her? Come on.